Most men think the moment that changes their dating life will be loud, a betrayal, a blow up, a breakup you can't ignore. It's not. The real turning point comes in silence when you catch yourself rereading the same situation with a different woman and realizing, with surgical clarity, this isn't her. This is the pattern. And in that second, dating changes, not because women change, not because you suddenly become cold, and not because you learn some manipulative trick. Dating changes because you begin reading structure instead of noise. You stop decoding every sentence, every excuse, every emotional wave, and you start watching behavior over time. Actions, consistency, effort, follow through. You move from being inside the drama to watching the play from the seats. And from that seat, confusion loses most of its power. Let's be clear from the start. This is not a talk about hating women. It's not a manual for winning. It's not a lesson in becoming a calculating robot. It's about clarity. It's about learning to see what is actually happening instead of what you wish were happening, because hope is loud and lonely. Most men are raised to take everything personally in dating. She doesn't respond, you did something wrong. She seems distant, you didn't try hard enough. She's inconsistent, you need better communication. She's unsure, your job is to be patient until she's sure. We're trained to assume her behavior is always a judgment of our value, and that mindset traps men on a treadmill for years. You keep running for approval, convinced that if you just do a little more, you'll finally earn stability. Then, one day, you notice something unsettling. Different women, different cities, different ages, different stories, and yet the script feels familiar. The same push-pull, the same vagueness, the same sudden cooling after warmth, the same tests, the same confusion, the same let's see where it goes, followed by you carrying the whole thing on your back. That's the moment the illusion starts to crack. Because the truth is, a lot of your exhaustion isn't coming from dating itself. It's coming from trying to control what you can't control. It's coming from negotiating with uncertainty. It's coming from the belief that if you just say the right thing, do the right thing, or give enough, you can steer someone into wanting you the way you want to be wanted. And real freedom begins when you stop trying to control what you can't control and start treating behavior as information, not as an insult, not as a verdict on your worth. Now, the first hard discovery: the man who does more doesn't automatically win. Men are builders. We're wired for accumulation. We believe effort creates results. We lift weights and the body changes. We study and the skill improves. We show up at work and the career advances. So we assume relationships work the same way. If I'm stable, kind, consistent, and understanding long enough, it will add up, and she'll finally feel what I feel. In real life, that formula works in many arenas. In attraction, it often doesn't, because attraction isn't a savings account. It's not built by deposits of niceness. Attraction is closer to electricity. It depends on polarity, presence, tension, and respect. It's alive when there's energy. It dies when it becomes a guaranteed utility. A lot of men learn this the painful way. They become the perfect guy and get treated like an option. They try to smooth every edge, explain every misunderstanding, keep everything calm, even when boundaries should have been drawn. And the harder they try to be perfect, the less respect they receive. Why? Because calm without standards doesn't read as strength. It often reads as fear of loss. Availability without self-respect doesn't read as devotion. It reads as low price. Consistency that costs you, nothing doesn't read as commitment. It reads as permission. Let me translate that into something concrete. A man sits down for the talk every time the vibe shifts. He explains his intentions, he overcommunicates. He tries to rescue every wobble in the connection with words. At first, it feels impressive. You're so mature. It's so easy with you. Finally, a man who communicates. Then the real test arrives: time. When her interest dips, does he stay grounded or does he start performing? When she pulls back, does he keep living or does he start chasing and managing? When the relationship needs structure, does he provide it, or does he turn into a customer service department for her emotions? Here's where many good men get stuck. They confuse emotional servicing with emotional connection. Emotional servicing is you constantly trying to stabilize her mood, fix her uncertainty, translate her mixed signals, and keep the machine running. Emotional connection is mutual. It's shared effort, it's consistent respect. It's two people building a bridge from both sides. Women don't fall for the man who gives the best presentation on why he should be chosen. They fall for the man whose life, standards, and behavior speak so clearly that no presentation is needed. When you understand that, you stop auditioning, you stop selling, you stop acting like love is something you earn by proving you're harmless. You simply live, and something strange happens. The dynamic becomes honest. When you stop trying to save conversations, the people who actually want you step forward. The people who only wanted the attention drift away. And that's not a tragedy. That's filtration. That's reality doing you a favor. The second discovery is what I call the law of permission. It matters less what you say you value than what you allow. You can give a speech about respect, loyalty, and commitment. But if you stay in situations where you're disrespected, ignored, breadcrumbed, or kept as a backup plan, your behavior is speaking louder than your words. And here's the part most guys resist. When you tolerate something repeatedly, you teach people how to treat you. A man says, "I don't like when you cancel last minute," but then he keeps rearranging his life every time she cancels. A man says, "I want something serious," but he keeps accepting vagueness and half effort. A man says, "I don't do mixed signals," but he stays and tries to decode them anyway. He thinks he's being patient. What he's actually doing is training the relationship to run on his anxiety. Dating isn't a courtroom where statements are accepted as truth. Dating is a marketplace of behavior where actions set the price. And the moment you start arguing for your own standards, you often reveal that you don't fully believe in them, because a man who truly believes in his standards doesn't need to convince anyone. He acts accordingly. Now, this is not about being rigid or punitive. It's not about threatening people. It's not about control. Boundaries are not ultimatums shouted in anger. Boundaries are choices you make calmly, consistently, and without negotiation. A boundary is not, "If you do that again, I'm leaving," while you stay. A boundary is leaving. A boundary is not, "Please understand me," while you accept the same disrespect. A boundary is removing your attention from disrespect. A boundary is not, "I deserve better," while you keep begging for better. A boundary is living like you deserve better. This is where many men get their power back, not power over women, but power over their own life. Because the second you start managing her perception of you, you hand her the remote control to your self-esteem. You become a politician checking approval ratings before speaking. You shapeshift to avoid losing someone who is already showing you uncertainty. Women can feel neediness. When your peace depends on how she texts, your presence becomes heavy. Heaviness kills attraction. Here's a simple observation that changes everything. People value what has limits. If your time is elastic, it becomes cheap. If you are always available, you become background. If you will tolerate anything for love, you are advertising that your love has no standards and your life has no spine. Now, the third discovery, you are not meant to build attraction. You are meant to reveal it. Men approach dating like construction, brick by brick. Attention, compliments, consistency, generosity. You imagine that if you lay enough bricks, a house of love will appear. But attraction is not a house you build. It's a landscape you discover. Your job isn't to manufacture desire. Your job is to clear the fog and see what's actually there. Are you compatible? Is the interest mutual? Is the effort balanced? Does her behavior match her words? Do you feel respected, or do you feel managed? Fog clears when you slow down and create space. Space is where reality becomes visible. This is why doing less often brings more clarity than doing more. When you stop initiating everything, you learn what would happen without your fuel. When you stop filling every silence, you discover whether she reaches for you or simply enjoys being chased. When you stop compensating for inconsistency, you see the relationship as it actually is. A lot of men fear this because it feels like losing control. They believe that if they stop pedaling, the bicycle will fall. But if a relationship collapses the moment you stop pedaling, it was never a partnership. It was you pushing a cart uphill while calling it us. There's a difference between effort and overcompensation. Effort is mutual. Overcompensation is one-sided. Effort feels alive. Overcompensation feels like anxiety dressed up as maturity. This is where many men have their real breakthrough. They stop measuring the temperature of the relationship every hour. They stop rereading messages. They stop playing detective. They stop checking in to make sure the connection is still breathing. They trust what they see, and what they see is usually clear. Fourth is what I call the vacuum effect. When you stop chasing, something shifts on the other end. Not a scandal, often disorientation. Most people get used to the hum of constant attention. Likes, quick replies. How are you? Messages, endless availability. It becomes background noise. They don't notice it until it stops, so you stop. Not as punishment, not to play games, not to teach her a lesson. You stop because you're no longer willing to sponsor uncertainty. And then gravity changes. Every system seeks balance. If you lean forward 80%, she can lean back 20% and still feel connected. If you straighten up, she has to either meet you or watch the connection fade. When some women sense that the old arrangement is gone, two common reactions appear. The first is irritation. You've changed. Are you mad? What's wrong with you lately? This is often the reaction of someone who lost a convenience. They're not necessarily evil, they're just noticing that the resource they relied on, your emotional labor, is no longer automatic. The second reaction is genuine interest. She starts initiating, she gets specific, she makes plans, she invests because she feels that the connection now has weight and cost, not just endless free supply. And here's the uncomfortable question that arises in that vacuum. Does she actually like you, or does she like the chase? That question is painful, but it is priceless because it produces truth, and truth is what adult men build their lives on. A man who understands this stops doing free labor for unclear situations. He realizes many connections survive only on his energy. The moment he stops pushing, they stop moving. And instead of mourning, he learns to celebrate the honesty, because the goal is not to keep anyone at any cost. The goal is to keep what is real. Now, let's talk about silence, because this is the final stage that scares men the most. Most guys try to talk their way into clarity. They debate mixed signals. They negotiate desire. They demand explanations. They try to force certainty with words. But desire is not negotiable. Respect is not negotiable. Interest is not negotiable. These things can't be argued into existence. They can only be observed. Silence is not the absence of power. Silence is often the presence of standards. When you stop over-explaining, you stop handing your dignity away in paragraphs. You stop doing courtroom speeches for someone who is already showing you their decision in behavior. You stop translating your boundaries into a language that pleases everyone. You just act. And acting doesn't require drama. If someone is consistently unclear, you don't punish them, you don't insult them, you don't label them. You simply stop investing like the relationship is secure when it isn't. If someone disrespects you, you don't lecture them for 3 hours. You remove access. If someone keeps you in a loop of maybe, you don't sit there begging for an answer. You decide that maybe is a no and you move. That is not cruelty. That is adulthood. This is the mindset shift. You stop behaving like a candidate begging for a job offer, and you start behaving like a man selecting a partner for his life. Selection is calm. Selection is not hate. Selection is not bitterness. Selection is self-respect. A man who lives this way doesn't become cold, he becomes solid. He doesn't become arrogant, he becomes clear. He doesn't become a manipulator, he becomes a guardian of his time. And that time matters. Because the real cost of unclear dating isn't just wasted evenings, it's wasted attention. It's wasted mental energy. It's lost sleep. It's the constant replaying of conversations, searching for what you did wrong when the truth is often simpler. Her interest wasn't stable, her availability wasn't real, or her desire wasn't there. Men burn out because they betray their intuition to protect a fantasy. They see a red flag and paint it green. They feel the inconsistency and call it complicated. They sense disrespect and call it miscommunication. They feel the one-sidedness and call it patience. Hope can be beautiful, but hope without standards is self-harm in slow motion. What happens when you stop betraying your intuition? The fatigue fades. Because your mind is no longer running a background program that consumes all your mental RAM. You stop analyzing every detail. You stop spinning theories. You stop living in reaction to someone else's mood. You sleep better because you're not rehearsing conversations at 2 a.m. You feel lighter because you're not carrying responsibility for someone else's uncertainty. And the irony is, you often become more attractive in the process, not because you're playing a strategy, but because you're finally centered in your own life. Now, I want to add some precision because boundaries can sound abstract until you can name what it looks like in real time. A lot of men think boundaries are something you announce. They imagine a dramatic scene. You state your rules, she nods, and everything improves. That's not how adult boundaries work. Boundaries are not speeches. Boundaries are logistics. They show up in what you do next. If she repeatedly cancels at the last minute, a boundary is not a lecture. A boundary is you making fewer plans with someone who treats your time as optional. You become less available, not in a theatrical way, but in a real way because you fill your calendar with your own life. If the conversation becomes disrespectful, a boundary is not you escalating to win. A boundary is you ending the interaction. We can talk when it's respectful, then you stop. Not because you're trying to control her emotions, but because you control access to your attention. If she keeps you in maybe territory, a boundary is not 10 more messages trying to get a clear label. A boundary is you moving at the speed of reality, you date other people, you invest elsewhere, or you step away entirely. You don't threaten, you don't shame, you simply stop acting like you're in a committed relationship when you're not. This is how you protect your nervous system, because the nervous system always tells the truth. If you feel anxious, keyed up, obsessed, and uncertain all the time, that's not passion. That's your body warning you that the situation lacks safety. A healthy connection can be exciting, but it also has a baseline of steadiness. You can relax inside it. You don't have to earn basic decency. So, how do you tell the difference between healthy effort and anxious overinvestment? Use 3 filters. First filter, reciprocity over time. Not one date, not 1 week, over time. Does she initiate sometimes? Does she follow through? Does she make room for you the way you make room for her? Or are you always pushing the cart? Second filter, clarity in behavior. People can be shy, busy, or cautious. Fine. But clarity shows itself in patterns. When someone cares, they are generally consistent. They don't keep you guessing as a lifestyle. Third filter, respect under friction. Everyone has a bad day. Everyone can be imperfect. But when tension appears, does she get fair or does she get cruel? Does she communicate or does she punish? Does she own her part or does she rewrite reality? Respect during friction tells you more than romance during calm. Now, let's talk about communication, because men are often told communication is the solution to everything. Communication is powerful in a healthy relationship. In early dating, communication has limits. If someone is attracted and emotionally available, communication helps align plans and expectations. If someone is not attracted or not available, communication becomes a negotiation with a locked door. You can't communicate your way into someone wanting you. You can't explain your way into being valued. You can't mature conversation your way out of disrespect. That's why the man who grows up stops holding trials. He stops collecting evidence. He stops cross-examining. He watches, decides, and acts. Here's what this looks like when you're actually on a date or texting. You keep your words simple. You don't over-justify. You don't argue about feelings. If something isn't working, you say it once, calmly, and then you let your actions do the rest. Example, I'm looking for something consistent. If that's not where you're at, no hard feelings. Then you stop trying to enforce it. This is not cold. This is clean. Clean communication plus clean boundaries is the opposite of games. Games are when you say one thing and do another. Maturity is when your words and actions match. You will lose some people when you live like this, and that's the point. Success isn't keeping every woman interested. It's exiting the wrong match early before it drains your focus, sleep, confidence, and momentum. So the higher move is to build a life where you are not negotiating from emptiness. This is the part no one wants to hear, but it's the foundation. If your life is thin, you will cling to whatever gives you a hit of connection. A man with a full life does not chase the same way. He doesn't need to. He has purpose, friends, training, work, hobbies, and goals. He has self-respect because he keeps promises to himself. That doesn't mean you're too busy for love. It means you're not starving for it. And hunger makes men accept crumbs. So if you want to become the kind of man who naturally has standards? Don't start with dating tactics. Start with your daily structure. Train your body for discipline. Keep your finances and routines in order. Maintain friendships and goals so one person isn't your entire emotional world. Learn to sit in silence without panicking. When you do that, you don't have to perform confidence. You become stable, and stability stands out in a world of chaos. Now, let's address the "what if I walk away too fast" question. Walking away too fast is not having standards, it's being avoidant. Staying too long is not loyalty, it's being afraid. The mature middle is this. You give reasonable chances, you communicate once or twice, and then you watch the response. Reasonable chances are for mistakes. Repeated chances are for patterns. Patterns are your real teacher. If a pattern shows you disrespect, inconsistency, or emotional unavailability, you don't need to hate the person. You just need to stop making them your project. And finally, remember this. Being a strong man in dating doesn't mean never getting hurt. It means you don't abandon yourself when you get hurt. You don't let pain turn you into a cynic. You let pain turn you into a man with clearer vision, and clearer vision is what makes you peaceful. So if you're listening to this and you feel calm instead of angry, that's not weakness. That's recovery. That's you stepping out of the hamster wheel and back into your own life. Because the goal is not to win love. The goal is to build a life where love fits and where it must come with respect, consistency, and mutual effort. And when a man finally understands that, he doesn't walk away out of anger. He walks away out of self-respect because he values his life enough to require reciprocity. That is real strength, leaving what is unclear because you're awake.